Awesome.
All right, so we're joined from the city of Dallas, Texas, by senior data analyst there with the city of Dallas, Tomeka Morrison. We thank you so much for joining us today. I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School, and we're recording this for all of our computer science engineering classes in Madison County Schools, middle school, high school. And we thank you so much for joining us. You got such a cool background dealing with such a new thing, and it's really interesting how you have a background, which you'll tell us about, and how that's combined with serving your community with coding and technology skills.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you guys for having me.
Now, before we
So
get
is this a little
into
Q&A sessions?
yeah,
Go
so
ahead, sorry.
before we get into what it all it is what all it is you do, because you do a lot. Take us back to your background, because I know you're originally from New Orleans, but then you went to Baylor University there in Waco, and got a degree that was not in tech. So take us back to your college background, your college experience, and how you kind of shifted gears once you saw you had a love for serving communities.
So yes, a little bit about me. I am originally from New Orleans. My family has been in the Dallas-Fort Worth area since Hurricane Katrina. That is what brought us here. So I graduated high school here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area as well. I Baylor was not my first choice, but I loved it. I actually had a non-traditional transition into college. I didn't go right out of high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So in high school, I did dual credit classes. That way when I graduated from high school, I had about 12 semester hours. I went to community college. I worked until I figured out what I wanted to do. And then by the time I started looking for universities to go to, I had about 60 credit hours. So I was able to transfer into university with a better GPA than I had coming out of high school. And a lot of high school students don't know that if you didn't do too well in high school, go to your local community college, get your GPA up. There is tons of transfer money out there. So LSU was actually my first choice. We visited LSU. It was just a very huge campus. My mom did feel like it was very personable. Went to Baylor, very small campus. I think the campus size when I went was like 15,000 students. And they honestly gave me the biggest scholarship. So that's what brought me to Baylor. My degree was in international studies, and I have a minor in poverty studies, social work. So international studies was always my passion. I thought I was going to be an Egyptologist growing up because I just loved everything, I loved everything worldly, everything that wasn't from here. I loved reading about Australia. I loved reading about different countries. I wanted to be Egyptologist. So I went to Baylor, international studies. You study a whole lot of politics and governments in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Africa. That was more so my focus. I do a language concentration, so I did French. Being from Louisiana, of course, always love French. Um, what opened my eyes to the transition that I made my last year in college, I went on a mission trip to DC where we mingled with a lot of aides that worked on Capitol Hill. So I realized that in order for me to work in the State Department, which is my goal, they required like a 6 week unpaid internship in another country. That was just not realistic for me coming out of college. Yes, it was not realistic for me coming out of college. So post college, I actually transitioned into becoming an AmeriCorps Vista. And so AmeriCorps, yes. So AmeriCorps Vista, Peace Corps. So Peace Corps is international, AmeriCorps is stateside.
Yeah, we have a
And
huge
I wound up
AmeriCorps
staying at my
chapter here
local
in Vicksburg,
university,
Mississippi.
yes, and I've actually worked with some FEMA Corps folks from Vicksburg, Mississippi when I worked in
Yeah,
FEMA, but I'll get to that.
yeah,
So I went to AmeriCorps. I wound up working at my university in the community engagement office. So I worked with advising service-led student organizations. And I also worked with community partners that those student organizations volunteered with. Whether they were reading to kids. We just wanted to facilitate that relationship between the university students and maybe it was Habitat for Humanity, right? So that's what I did for about a year in AmeriCorps. Um, then I came back to my hometown and did the same thing at a small nonprofit here from my hometown, being in AmeriCorps Vista. If anyone doesn't know, AmeriCorps also gives you money for to help towards student loans or to help to continue education. So you can go straight out of high school and do something local if you just do not know what you want to do, and to also get more funds to go to school or to continue education. Um, After AmeriCorps, I went ahead and I joined FEMA, which took me on another journey. If anyone doesn't know what FEMA is, it's a federal emergency management agency. So they handle a lot of things from natural disasters, that like the first responders of those things. And a
Mhm.
lot of people think, we're boots on the ground. We're boots on the ground. We're saving people. We're pulling babies out of water. We're not doing that. We are there to basically get in there and stabilize the community.
Yeah.
So I've been to Houston post the big storm that they had. I was working in logistics, so I was managing resources coming and going for folks that may have lost their homes. Um, I was maintaining the facility for the workers that were coming to town, because people don't know when FEMA gets called out, they're sending thousands of workers on the ground to help people, and that's a whole mission that has to be facilitated via logistics. So, in traveling with FEMA, I believe I came across a podcast of something, or I'm a reader, so I had a lot of downtime. And when you're traveling by yourself, you have to find hobbies to keep yourself engaged, right? You're in a new city, you don't know a lot of people. You have to find hobbies to keep yourself engaged. And I was probably listening to a podcast, if I recall, and someone mentioned something about data science or data analytics. And I took my iPhone out and I wrote in a note, data analytics research. And I just put a question mark. Didn't look at it again until about 2 years later when I was cleaning on my phone and I saw this note on my phone. And I was still working for FEMA, but I was in a different city on like a 10-month assignment. And I was like, okay, I have downtime. It's not as crazy, the disaster's kind of stabilized. We're working sane hours. I have downtime to try to figure out what's my next pivot going to be because I can't travel like this forever. So I started doing some research, and I saw that data. I've always loved, like I say, stats and facts. So statistics and facts. And someone would say, "Hey, well, I read somewhere that this percentage of people, are hungry." And I'm just like, let me look that up so I can fact check this person. So I've always been like the know-it-all fact checker. So when I looked up the term data analytics, I was like, there's a career for this. There's literally a career for this. So if anyone knows, like the background of data analytics really came out of politics, right? So when a lot of um, politicians were trying to figure out how to better vie for their voting base, there was this whole science that came out from the numbers behind data, hence data science. And from there, you know, it's we use data science everywhere from social media, which a lot of the kids are using. My organization, particularly the city of Dallas, where like most municipal federal governments are just realizing that we have a lot of data. We need to figure out how to harness. We need to grow as fast as these big corporations. So when I found out about data science, I was like, okay, this looks. It didn't look easy, but it looked doable because it was exciting. I took it upon myself to kind of do some self-teaching, but I did wind up going through a boot camp, which is kind of like a fast-paced 24-week program that you can go through to kind of like get the skills faster than the college course. I figured I paid for college, why not go to a boot camp? If I can get something in 4 years, I can try to get it down in 24 weeks. So prior to going to the boot camp, I wanted to be as prepared as possible because I wanted to not be seeing a lot of the information for the first time. So I went in and I, you know, did a lot of self learning, learned a lot of coding online through various apps that they had. That way, when I saw the information, it wasn't for the first time. But um, I said all that to say that led me to the career that I'm in today. Just kind of finding and stumbling into things. And like you said, with a lot of the servant leader, working with the community, it all plays a part in like your final story. So I don't know if that helped answer your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing you mentioned, and obviously, here we're all about giving kids options. I mean, obviously, if college is in their path, they need to go to
Of
college.
course.
We have a great community college program here in Mississippi that has 1 and 2 year certifications. But you mentioned the boot camp because I'm not telling people don't go to college, but if you are a person that knows you don't want to put the financial burden on your family, maybe you weren't a great high school student, you know you're not going to qualify for things. A lot of these tech jobs are more interested in certifications and being able to learn certain languages than they are necessarily on a degree. And that would also be the case. And I know
Correct.
probably in your field, you probably know some former military that got their training in the military because you can get certifications for free being a part of any of the armed forces branches. So it is not the way it's growing, they need
Correct.
people that are skilled. So they don't necessarily need people that have gone the college route because it's not for everybody.
That's very correct. And I have a degree. And I will tell you that my husband specifically, he does not have a college degree, but he's a scrum master, and that's another area of technology, more so project management. But I do have folks that work on my team that are out of the military, and they like you said, they are provided training. And the tech route is much different than the university route because I don't know if anyone knows this, but university is very bureaucratic. The change is slow there. Tech adapts so fast. It adapts so fast, so you're constantly learning. So that's why like smaller classes and certifications are easier to digest because you're on a continuous learning plan within technology.
Yeah, and another good point is in your case, and we also had a guest from the United Kingdom in the fall that had a similar story of getting a degree in a certain field and then getting certified in tech. That is an option for you because with your experience in social work, you're able to serve the community, but with the technological changes, you're able to keep up with the technology. And with a huge city like Dallas, that data that comes in, it helps you be even more effective at your career.
Correct, correct. And I always say for me because my with my minor being in social work, I realized that sitting in a lot of the classes with the folks that were majoring in social work, I say this is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's very stressful work. Somebody has to do it. But I always said I wanted to do something on the macro level, not the micro level. It's easier, like when they say about the stream and the babies coming down the stream. It's harder to pull them out one by one, but I want to go upstream and figure out what the bigger problem is. And working with data allows you to do that on the macro level.
Yeah. Now, another thing we'd like to hit on in this class this year, and I can speak for the other teachers on this, is that in the past, the tech jobs are only with tech companies. We're seeing more and more fields need more and more tech people, especially now we've had a few people that have been in the medical field. So now tech people are even more needed in the medical field, but in your
Mhm.
case, in local government. So in a city like Dallas and even here in Mississippi or
Correct.
Atlanta, Miami, Las Vegas, LA, Chicago, they have tech people that are using this data to make these decisions that we see these politicians making, these government officials making. So and I know you also are proficient in Python, which is one of the newer programming languages. So why are some of these tech skills so needed on a government level when you wouldn't think of the government of being a tech-driven field?
Yes, it's so interesting you said that because um, I I tell people this all the time, especially in my networking area, when especially now folks are keeping up with the layoffs in the tech field, and I said, well, everybody needs tech. The school district needs tech. You know, they need tech for programming to try to figure out where their numbers are and how could they forecast in the future how many students they're going to serve. Your local government needs tech. The federal government needs tech. And people think that the federal government and the local government, like they're high tech, they know your information, they have everything. No, they need these professionals. They're vying for these professionals. I even know on the federal level, like they're, creating funding so that they can attract even cybersecurity specialists. We all know about hacks that happen. So, every place needs tech. If someplace has an app, if someplace has a population that they're serving, they need tech so that they can make better data informed decisions for the population that they're serving.
Yeah, we actually had in Hinds County, which is just south of us, where the city of Jackson is, they had
Hmm.
a large ransomware attack last year, and that's where cybersecurity people were needed on a government level. So,
Yes,
and there's cybersecurity boot camps. We have cybersecurity certifications. That's not necessarily a career where you would need to go the university route. So that's not going
correct.
to go away. Now, one thing, and I got some questions we'll get to, but before we get to that, one thing we talked about before we started recording is that the media loves to scare people into saying that technology is gonna take everybody's jobs. everything's going to be automated. And let's face it, technology is not going away. That's a fact. And things are changing. The way things are done are changing. But it's not necessarily the jobs that are going to go away. It's the types of jobs and the skills needed in those jobs. So just from what you've seen, and obviously you're ahead of the ball with being a government employee with data science and tech. So what are some of these trends that are changing? Because we got kids all the way down to seventh grade that are going to be seeing this in the next 5, 6 years. They're going to be graduating from high school. What are some of these careers and skills they need to be looking at?
So I know and I'll tackle this first. One of the biggest ones that we see a lot of times is automation and automation via, apps like ChatGPT, right? Um, like I said before we started recording that these are tools. These are tools to help enhance what we already do, right? So no different than the introduction of the electric toothbrush. You're not sitting there moving your arm as hard. It's an enhancement to a product that's already there. So some of the tools to be mindful of is, especially in my field with data analytics and data science, machine learning and automation. We see those when we interact with chatbots online. If we're on an app for something and a chatbot pops up, that's not a person interacting with, because you may want to ask the question of a retailer at 12 a.m. when you're scrolling on your phone. And it's not an ideal time for a person to be online and communicate with you. A chatbot is there. So that helps automate some of the processes that are pretty mundane and repetitive. And I'm going to be honest with you, I used ChatGPT before we connected because I said, okay, well, how can I anticipate some questions, or how can I work on explaining data analytics and data science to this age appropriate audience that I'll be speaking to? And so I asked for some samples. I asked for some scenarios for it, and that's a mundane task of planning out, my speaking points. Of course, you edit and you sprinkle some stuff in there, but it just helps automate some tasks, and not just in data science, but you have folks that are bloggers and YouTubers. I know a lot of the kids like YouTubers. You may ask it to outline you some content instead of you sitting racking your brain trying to say, okay, let me try to find 20 video ideas and I'm going to give myself an hour. You can go on ChatGPT, you can use Google Trends, you pull all the data points that they have aggregated for you and have that data in front of you with the click of a button, rather than you taking a few hours or so to brainstorm those things. And it just helps you be more efficient in your task. It's not going to completely replace the work. It just helps with efficiency.
Yeah. Now, one thing we have to talk about before, and I got some good questions we're going to get to. Obviously, there's a big need, just like every field. There's a big need for diversity in this field, whether it be women, whether it be non-white individuals. We'll have some first-generation Americans that'll see this. We're a rural Black community here in Camden, and one of the reasons that is needed for diversity, besides the obvious ones in tech, and in we've had some guests talk about when tech is not diverse, things slip through the cracks. Data isn't
Correct.
it isn't read it isn't read correctly. Now, again, that doesn't mean that the people doing it are mean or that they're evil or racist, but when you don't have every type of gender, every type of race, every type of skill at the table, the greater good isn't served. So
Correct.
obviously the world is changing and these skills are changing, and I'm sure, and we haven't mentioned it, but I'm sure that a lot of times you've been the only woman, you've been the only minority. So talk about that and why the diversity and why these kids should think so hard about getting into this field that desperately needs them.
So the field of technology is not as diverse, and it's just opportunity for opportunity reasons. The reason why it's very important is because someone like myself can come in with a different lens as a woman of color, about a data set, for example, right? So let's say that recently, and this is something more so in the medical field related with um, the the what is it, CRISPR, which is a gene editing technology that has allowed some scientists to edit people's genes to actually rid them of sickle cell. And sickle cell specifically disproportionately affects African Americans and people from Africa in a certain region. What most people don't know is sickle cell is actually an adaptation to help to make people immune to malaria. So
Yeah.
that's why you have a lot of people from West Africa that have sickle cell because it's basically an mutation. So something like CRISPR, which is a gene editing technology, it took a scientist to say, hey, let's focus on this certain population to see if we can affect the change in them. Now, they could have focused on something like, melanoma in non-people of color. And we know that melanoma in non-people of color, there are two different causes for it. So a lot of times bring in your lens of your background, that diversity, that's very helpful. It can be diversity as far as age, women, people of color. If you say, hey, let's look at this population and see if we can aggregate these numbers and we can see, okay, well, eh, Parkinson's actually affects people of color in a different way than it affects people of non-color. And we know that because we have these data points. And we know that because that was something I may be interested in and I may bring to the folks that I'm working with. So that's why it's very important because that goes back to me wanting to fix the micro level issues rather than the macro level. You may be sitting in the classroom and you're saying, hey, I know I have this issue in my community. I have no idea where to start. Well, it's not just you, maybe other people are having it. And those numbers are out there. So that's the beauty of technology and data. You can kind of look at stuff at a macro lens.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we need young people to get into this because nobody in the community needs to be missed because technology is going to affect all of us, whether we wanted to or not. And nobody needs to fall through the cracks in any type of way. So when you have everybody at the table, everybody is really served.
Correct. Most definitely.
All right. Well, I do have some questions from the students. This first one is Michael
Okay.
Sherrill. He's in 10th grade, one of our football players here. And he asked, what do you enjoy most about your career?
So what I enjoy most specifically with working on in the public sector is that a lot of the work that we do actually affects, we can see the effects, right, towards our residents within the city of Dallas. I also, in addition to my job, I do side projects. So if I'm just like, hey, new census numbers have come out, let me go ahead and take a look to see how this specifically affects my zip code. So that's what I love about my work. It just gives me exposure to it gives me the skills to kind of dig deeper. And even, being a football player, one really big thing is sports analytics. Like the last 5 years, the way that, sports have used technology from the NBA players to the cameras following the balls on the court, that's all machine learning. Like that's all technology. So even, sports has tried to incorporate it, and sports analytics is a really big field as well.
Absolutely. This is Tykevian Boyd. He's also in 10th grade. And he asked, what changes in technology do you see coming in the near future?
So specifically, like I mentioned, automation, machine learning, like I mentioned with the basketball, it, let's see, machine learning. I see the automation piece. I met a guy at a networking event prior to COVID. He actually worked with Frito-Lay, the chip company, showing them how to automate their process. And he said, a lot of people think we're going to automate the packaging process, we're going to cut jobs, but I also want to train people in automation. So you have to be trained to teach the machines. You have to be trained to operate the machines. You have to be trained to do the code on the machines. So it's kind of a give and take. But automation, machine learning are two of the big things that I really see taking off.
Absolutely. This is Rondell Ellis. He's in 9th grade. And he asked, what is the main problem and struggle you see when people coming in that lack technology skills?
I think that one of the main struggles is, and this is coming from somebody who went to college, it's the rote memory of it all. So I know that on my learning path, when I was learning how to code, it's like, I'm not memorizing this, I'm not memorizing this. And you have to unlearn that you have to memorize everything in technology. Technology is so open source, and that means that I can get online, I can go to Python, I can find the documentation, and I can copy and paste a piece of code. I still need to know what that code needs to do. So I can't just copy and paste it for a website or a backend of a website. I still need to know how it operates, but I don't need to be caught up on, I can't remember how to do this function. So I'm going to stare at my screen for 10 minutes until I remember it. I need to go find where the documentation is. So the thing in technology, you do not have to know everything. You don't need to feel like a whiz kid. You need to know where to find your resources and your documentation, and that's going to get you further ahead.
Yeah, and I think I can speak for all the other teachers that'll see this later is that you rarely get it right, if ever, the first time. So there is a lot
Mm,
of trial and
that's
error, when, especially in data, if you don't have the data, you have to know where to go to find it. And that,
exactly.
if you're not on the data side, if you're on the engineering side, and when you're having an engineering project or a data project, you have to go and find it. It's not just going to uh, fall into your lap. These tech jobs need people that can find the solution. So
Exactly.
it really is a puzzle. So I've got one
Yeah,
more.
that's the biggest learning curve I see.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I just got one more. This is Krishan Smith. He's also one of our football players in 10th grade. And he asked, what is the most rewarding part of serving your community?
So the most rewarding part is that one, I serve a community that I live in, and two, I don't think people realize how much like your community wants you involved, right? So it's not like I'm serving a community that I'm an hour away from, or I do work virtually because I go into the office once a week, but I can see the outcome of the decisions that we're making. So
Absolutely.
that's the biggest thing about serving your community. You're in it. You can only fight for your community. No one else is gonna fight for it. You live in it. You make sure you take pride in it, and you see what you can do to change it.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us today. But before we go, I just have two questions for you. First of all,
Okay.
you're from New Orleans, but you live in Dallas. Saints or Cowboys?
Same.
There you go. And we got some Saints fans in here with us too. So, and I'm a big Saints guy. But in all seriousness, we talked a lot about the changing career trends and the changing skills. So these kids, again, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grade, they're about to graduate from high school and be making some big life decisions. Whether they choose to go to college or choose not to go to college, why should they really consider getting into these tech fields?
So I would say the tech field, I recommend getting into it because one is the future, and that sounds very cliche. But no matter where you go, you're going to have some level of tech. My sister is a teacher in one of the local school districts, and her and I were talking about. I had no idea that she was even using ChatGPT to help teachers do some kind of thing, but she was kind of leading that effort in her school. So this is a teacher who is using ChatGPT and showing other teachers how to use it for efficiency. So you're like, tech isn't going anywhere. I mean, we're already using social media. That's technology. You want to be on the back end of that because you want to know where everything is going, right? If I would recommend any skills, especially in my field, for someone to learn Python, of course, um, SQL, and then I use business intelligence tools like Power BI and Tableau. So, but a programming language, once you learn one programming language, it's like learning a spoken language. You can learn any of them, and that I really tell people once you learn a programming language, it's like learning a spoken language.
Our ICT teachers would
The
be glad
syntax
to
is
hear
the
you say
syntax
that.
is the same. Yes, yes, yes.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. Tomeka Morrison, all the way from Dallas, Texas. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, bye.
See ya.